Hi, Tavishi. Thank you for interviewing with us. For the viewers, may we request you to please share your journey, your story in your own words?
Absolutely. So my name is Tavishi Sachdeva, and my life has kind of been scattered across different places. For the first 10 years of my life, I was in Delhi. So born into a Punjabi family, I was there. My parents are doctors. They were working there. But then my dad transferred out and he got a job in the Middle East. So my parents moved to the Middle East and I was there for a few years, but the schooling wasn't great. So I went to a boarding school. So I'd sort of been on my own since then. So I did engineering, computer engineering, and I did a twinning course where I did 2 years in Manipal. And then I transferred out to the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign. And that's where I finished my last 2 years of computer engineering. And after graduating from 2010 to about 2017, so, for straight 4 years, I was working in the US, in Chicago. I was working in this healthcare setup, doing a lot of workflow automation, business process consulting, that kind of stuff. I'd been in the States for about 9 years at that point, and I had been away from home since I was 12 years old.
Right.
So I think the way my journey spanned out is I sort of realized that, I had work-wise, career-wise, I was very happy and, had the best education, really good job, living in a great place. But I really missed family. And I just felt like, India is known for its culture, people, family, belongingness.
Mm-hmm.
And instantly in 2014 and 2016, I had a chance to come to India and work on a project, same company that I was with. It was at the time called Accretive Health. That's when I realized I was lucky enough to get a first-hand taste of living in India.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I realized, oh my God, I love it here. And I figured I want to move back. And so I didn't go the green card route. I did apply for MBA to a bunch of schools with the help of Experts Global. And ultimately, I decided it is India that I want to move to. And I did my MBA from ISB Hyderabad. That was in 2017 to 2018. Post which I got a job again in the tech healthcare space. So I was working with Indegene for 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
And just last year, I quit my job and I've kind of started out on my own venture where I'm teaching yoga and doing counseling.
That is amazing. I mean, it's been truly inspiring to listen to your entire journey. So, in your opinion, what were a few factors or actions you took that made all the difference?
Absolutely. I think there, two big things come to mind. One is that, whatever I was doing, I enjoyed it. I wasn't complaining or cribbing. I took the best. I kind of milked the experience, so to speak. So I appreciated it and I got to develop my personality. I got to develop my communication skills, my presentation skills and so on in that atmosphere, which again these are all transferable skills, right? No matter which industry you're working in. So I think one thing was that I kind of made sure to make the best of whatever I was in, even if I knew that wasn't my end game, focus on the journey still and kind of milk that. And I think another thing was not be afraid to challenge status quo, because a lot of people they want to make it out, the American dream, once they move out of India, coming back is less heard of. It's less heard of, although I think it's happening more and more now. I do know a few friends who've done that. So I think kind of not falling into that social conditioning of, I'm here, I've made it, I should be here. So I think those are two big things, that not letting social conditioning hold me back, following my heart. And then in whatever space I was, making the best of it, even if that is not the end game as you may think.
That's amazing. So, going back to your GMAT preparation phase, what were the main resources that you used for your prep, and what advice would you give to the future GMAT aspirants?
So, I realized that for me, the way GMAT worked out is, and I think it happens for a lot of people, that they plan to give it, but then they're not very serious about it. So then they study, then they stop studying, and then they study again, and you start, so there are all these breaks in the middle,
Mm-hmm.
which is what happened with me as well.
Okay.
Now, I know most people may not have the luxury of having that kind of time, right? Most of the times you're like, okay, I want to do my MBA. I have 4 months to prep or 6 months to prep. I go hard at it and I give the exam. My case was not that. So I'm going to come from a place of, my experience, and I'll tell you what happened with me. And hopefully it helps others because, even if you're thinking of MBA, say in the distant future,
Yeah.
I don't think it's a bad idea to pick up a GMAT book and kind of like start going through it, because I feel like GMAT, it is almost a way of thinking. It sharpens your critical thinking skills and like picking the small details out and the little hacks. So for me, the fact that I kind of did it in breaks over, a span of a year and a half actually helped me because I felt the concepts really sunk in. Every time I'd go back, I would be better at it. And it kind of like had settled in. I know it's not always possible, but I feel like if you know you have to give the GMAT, or if you feel like, okay, I'm thinking of doing an MBA somewhere down the road, picking up a GMAT book like right away and kind of like, going at it. There's so many online resources as well, is not a bad idea. But of course, if you have a shorter span of time and you need to go hard at it, then I guess you just need to put in a lot of hours every day. And I did that the last 2-3 months. I did that. In fact, I even took off from work the last 1 week and I just like studied some 10 hours a day. So, that's just my style. Like I go hard at it.
Right.
But I was in the States at the time. So I gave my GMAT also in the States. And I gave the GMAT thinking I will probably want to do my MBA in the next 5 years. I didn't know exactly when.
All right.
So I used Veritas. Actually, in the very building that I worked, they were having coaching classes. We would go in and then they had all these online resources. Other than that, I think I just did free online exams.
Okay. So, what would you like to say about your experience and learnings from managing the application timeline?
The application timeline. I mean, one thing is a given, the sooner the better, right? I feel like, again, I feel like even if you're thinking of doing an MBA, it is not a bad idea to start like going, browsing, maybe even like make a simple spreadsheet, right? That tells you school and the round 1, round 2, round 3, because there's also like things you think about whether you want to do round 1, you want to do round 2, you want to do round 3. So I think starting early is the key. But I think, again, everyone doesn't have that privilege. I think the biggest thing, if you have less time, so to speak, I think, first of all, having a spreadsheet is super important with, your schools and your dates.
Mhm.
And the essay questions, right? You want to jump in right away into the essay questions, and don't by any means think that your first draft will be close to the final, because there's going to be a lot of changes. So you want to give yourself as much time as you can for the essays, which means starting early. But if you don't have time, you just kind of make do with what you have. But essays is the first thing you need to go to and kind of get your story right in your mind. Where am I at this point in my life and why this?
Absolutely. So, would you like to describe your interview experience with the B school?
Sure. So I think most of them were very pleasant, honestly. I think the only one that was a little bit where they kind of pushed me a little bit, which also I frankly enjoyed, was IIM Ahmedabad.
All right.
I Ahmedabad, where it was very interesting. They were pushing me to like, why do you want to work for the social sector? Why non-profit? And I really enjoyed that discussion, and I stuck to what I wanted. I stuck to what I felt I believed in. So I think that was kind of an interesting experience where I think sometimes they might try to like poke you a little bit from all directions just to see how strong your resolve is. So yeah, I think you need to be very coherent with your story. Whatever story you've put in your application, you just need to be very coherent and then just be easygoing. For me, I didn't look at the interviewers as having an upper hand over me by any means. For me, it was more about, hey, let's get into a conversation.
Mhm.
Let's see what you're looking for. Let's see what I'm looking for. And if it's a match, great. And if it's not a match, then there will be a match. So I feel like approaching interviews like that for me has always been very helpful, where I can truly be natural and be myself then.
Okay, that's a unique way to go about it. So, would you like to tell us about your MBA experience?
Sure. So yeah, finally I decided to go with ISB, and I just felt like it would be an easier transition for me coming from the US, over here. I felt like for me, ISB was a safer option. And of course, it's well ranked as well. So
Mhm.
ISB is a 1-year course, which feels a little short, to be very honest. It's like you're in and then you're out. But there is so much you end up doing in that 1 year that
Yeah.
like I look back and I'm just like, how did I manage that? Classes, extracurricular activities, dancing, sports championships. We had our own ISL, ISB Sports League, that had like sponsors and money involved and all of that. So it was a very wholesome experience in that we did so many things, and yes, it was very stressful at times just because there's so many things you're trying to do. But
Right.
I think it really makes you realize how much we can do. Like we're capable of so much more than we think. And especially when you have that kind of group energy, you swim through, you make it happen. So I think that academically, definitely I feel more well-rounded. Like I said, if I were to start my own business today, I have basics in place, and I know what are the things that I need to look out for or be careful about or, keep in mind. So I did my specialization was, general, just leadership and strategy. So I didn't like go into finance or marketing or anything too niche of that sort. I just kind of kept it general, some project management classes as well, which is what I ended up doing, implementation management and project management after my MBA,
Mhm.
and got a lot accomplished. I do not know how. Sleepless nights, yes, some of them, but also really fun, good times with friends.
That's amazing. It was quite a wholesome experience.
It was. Yes.
Okay. So, can you tell us about your job search experience during the MBA and what tips would you give to the future MBA applicants?
So we have rounds, right? You have a placement round one, placement round two, placement round three, and you have different companies coming in and you just kind of go in and talk to them and they shortlist you and there's an interview, and that's kind of how it gets narrowed down. For me, I was lucky enough to get placed with Indigene in the first round itself. So it wasn't as stressful, because as soon as the placements start, you get placed, you're done. Now, like round two, round three, last few semesters, you don't really have to like worry about it because you've gotten a job and you know where you're going, you know where you're headed. So it is a little bit more nerve-wracking, definitely for people who, get their placements, say in round two or round three. But I will say that, the schools are really good about bringing a lot of companies in. I think I'm pretty sure the placement rate is well above 90-95%, right? So most people find what they want right there. And if they don't, there is help. They have mentors coming in. So for example, I remember talking to somebody who had started his own yoga studio. So they match you, they see, okay, what are you interested in? This is the list of alumni, you can choose whichever one makes sense for you to have that discussion. So it was, again, even though that's not what I ended up doing right away, but it was nice to kind of see somebody who was where I would have wanted to be in a few years, which
All
is
right.
essentially where I'm going now. So, with God's grace, things work out. For placements, I think that's what it is, that if you get through in first round, or if your company is coming in the second or the third round, then you still have a little bit more patience. But say if you wanted to get through some company in round one and you don't get it, then I know that a lot of people do get discouraged, but I've seen those very people get discouraged in round one and then move on to finding better companies, better packages in round two, and sometimes even round three.
Right.
So I think the big thing about placements is not giving up hope and keeping at it, and kind of knowing that, it's not just from your end. It also has to be a match from both ends. And yeah.
All right. Okay. That's very interesting and it's also inspiring. So, would you like to share your post MBA journey with us? Like, how did the entire pre application phase and your MBA experience contribute to your growth post MBA?
Absolutely. So I had this thought in my mind as I was talking about my MBA experience. We tend to kind of, especially in interviews, tend to kind of paint a rosy picture of everything, right? But I think it's important to also bring up the things that are hard, especially when, you're talking to prospective students, so they know what they're getting into. So one thing I do want to say about my MBA experience is, and I didn't face too much of this, but I saw a lot of people around me facing this, and it was very natural to feel this way. And I did too. I did too in certain areas. And they tell us this as soon as MBA begins, they tell us that, look, wherever you've come from, you must be top tier in your field, right? Wherever you're coming from.
Mhm.
But when you're here among 700 people, everyone is A plus.
Right.
There may be times you might end up questioning your own accomplishments. right? Because you're around so many smart people, you're around people who've accomplished different things in different areas. And it is, traditionally it's a bit of a competitive atmosphere, right? It doesn't have to be. I didn't take it like that, which is where I felt it was much easier and more fulfilling for me. But I do want to kind of like just let the prospective students know that, that can happen because you're now going to go from top tier to a group of top tier, right? And everyone's going to have different strengths, different weaknesses, and we tend to question ourselves and undermine ourselves sometimes. But do not do that, because the very reason you are in the class, the very reason you're selected is because you have something to offer too. And I think that is what one needs to focus on, what you have to offer, but then also try to grasp and learn from the other folks around you, because it is very unlikely that you would be in a situation like that where you're surrounded by so many brilliant people from so many different walks of life. So that is one thing that I would like to say. And because the stressors can be high just because so much is going on, I think everyone ends up having at least one or two breakdowns. So I think that is to be expected and it's normal. And we have counselors even on campus. So I think it's okay to go in embracing the fact that it is going to be challenging at times, but it will also be rewarding, and that you must kind of keep focus on who you are and just learn as much as you can.
All
So
right.
these are, I feel like, a few takeaways during the MBA experience that are very important.
Okay.
So the application process, I think that's where Experts Global really, really helped me. College applications, I was just very clueless about where should I apply? What should I do? What is my story? How do I paint it here? So like you guys have a very robust questionnaire, which makes you think a lot. And I'm willing to bet that my filled out version was the longest you've probably had till now. Mayank had to read it. So thanks to Mayank for putting up with reading all of that. But, it's a very exhaustive questionnaire, which really helps you think through. And by the end of answering all of those questions, you kind of realize, okay, this is who I am and this is where I am. It really gives you that introspective and retrospective kind of time. So I think that really helped me. And after that, my story was more or less consolidated. Then I just had to tailor it to the questions in the different applications, because they're all slightly different, right? They want to bring out slightly different aspects.
Right.
That really helped me. And then Experts Global also really helped me with narrowing down on which schools, because I was just so confused. So I actually ended up applying to a few schools in Canada, in the States, in Europe, in India, just because I wanted to keep my options open. But then finally, like by the time the results came through, I realized, okay, this is India is where I want to be. So I think that was the application process for me, very exhaustive in terms of doing introspection work and, looking at what I want to be, where I want to go. Everything was submitted in time. I think there might have been one or two applications where I did it like last minute, but for the most part, everything was in time. And, post MBA, I have to say that working in Indian corporate culture, which is very different from the experience I'd had having working in the States for, my first work experience, 7 years over there. I think what maybe the MBA didn't prepare me for is some of the soft skill aspects, because there is a cultural difference. It is also one of the reasons why I quit my job and decided to do my own thing.
Okay.
So the spirit of collaboration is different, I felt. Like in the States, in the company that I was, you could argue and collaborate. But in India, if you argue, then that's just like a no. It becomes like an ego mess, right? So culturally, I did have a hard time fitting in. My work, it was acknowledged in both places. But culturally, while in the States, I may have been seen as a superstar for, being a go-getter and, being out there. Over here, it became a little bit that, oh, she's confrontational, she's a bit aggressive. And then I had the choice, right? I had a choice whether I want to change my style and kind of blend in, or, these are things I value about me. I don't want to change them. Perhaps let me take it outside of here, either to a different company or a different field altogether, where I feel like these very things are not against me, but help me.
Right.
Right. So I also realized what were my strengths, what were my weaknesses. So you kind of like find what is it that works well for you, and you go from there.
All right, this is really inspiring. So, what would be your final message or suggestion to all the future MBA applicants and GMAT aspirants watching this video?
So my journey has not been very conventional, as you can see. A lot of people that kind of are aspiring MBA applicants, they want to up the corporate ladder, they want to get into, the CXO positions and all of that, which I think is fantastic. Some might want to become entrepreneurs. They have their own kind of mindset. Some might want to join existing corporations and kind of climb up that ladder, be in high leadership positions. I think whatever it is that you want to do it. Don't let social conditioning hold you back. And it's easy to fall trapped to the rat race, but take a step back and see what is it that you really want to do. I
Right.
think in the long term, it definitely pays off. And to be succinct, two things. One is that know what you want and go for that. Like, don't let social conditioning weigh you down. And number two, it's okay to take time to do that, right? It doesn't have to be right away. It's okay to kind of explore both areas, kind of find a balance. And when you feel right, taking that step. These days, there's so many mentors available, right? Through LinkedIn, experts, like there's so many people. So
Mhm.
talk a lot, get insight, find out what you want to do, and don't let social conditioning hold you back.
All right. Thank you so much, Tavishi. Listening to your experiences and journey has been amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. I'm sure your suggestions are going to be very helpful to all the future candidates and everyone watching this video. So thank you so much for your time.
You are most welcome. I am very happy to help and here, if anyone needs anything.
All right. Thank you. Take care. Yeah. Okay. Bye.